like to switch now to say hello to Brittni, Alicia, and Hannah, who were interns in 2016. And we'll start with Brittni, and who has been a Pink Concussions board member. Would you like to introduce yourself for a couple minutes to the group?
You're on mute.
Thanks, Hannah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Brittni Vitale. I joined Pink back in 2016, right before our Georgetown event, which is where I met Alicia and Hannah. I got my concussions playing college soccer for the most part. I've really come a long way in the last 5 years, thanks to Pink, thanks to my family, my friends, Alicia, Katherine, Hannah, Kara, my relationships with all of these people in this room today. Unfortunately, it's been a while since we've got to see everybody in person, but it's great to be here and we're happy to have you all. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. And now, Alicia, do you want to share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'm Alicia. I am from Philadelphia. I'm 25. Oof, that's scary to say out loud. I joined Pink probably around, I think I met Katherine when we were working with another foundation in 2015. And then I hopped on Katherine's train and we have been together ever since. I got my career-ending concussions in 2012 playing soccer, and it was a very long road, and I still definitely deal with a lot of symptoms physically, mentally, emotionally, but significantly better because of the resources that have been, laid out for me, and everything that I've learned since then. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
A quick review from you, and then we'll go into some deeper questions.
Perfect. I'm Hannah Richards, and I grew up in Utah. I'm currently living in Hawaii, though. And I sustained my concussions in 2013, and then I was looking for help until I think around 2016 when I found Pink, and I met all these beautiful women at the Georgetown conference on concussions, and I found a family that was there to support me. And the thing that I found the most is that I found someone and these sisters who really knew how I felt. And so that was something that was huge for me because I was going through life and no one understood how I felt. And so Pink definitely gave me this beacon of light and hope that I needed at that time desperately. And I've found so much strength through them throughout all the years and even till today. So I'm so grateful for this amazing group of women that we have.
That's awesome. And I have to say, each one of you contributed so much to the work that I was doing and the programs that we were putting together, because the energy that you all brought to this. So let's just spend a few minutes talking about sort of the dark time. Can you describe what it was like for you, Brittni, after the brain injury, but before that beginning to things were starting to improve? What was that like?
It was a long, dark tunnel. So long, I don't even think we knew there was light at the end of that tunnel. Before that Georgetown conference, I didn't even know for sure that my symptoms were from concussions. I was told repeatedly by doctors that they weren't. And then for the very first time, I had suspicions, but for the very first time at that conference, when I met Hannah and Alicia and you and everybody else, I knew. I didn't care what doctors said to me anymore. I knew in that moment that was what I was dealing with. And that was really the first step in that long staircase out of the tunnel. That was the first time I think I believed maybe there was some light there, but there was still a long way to go. It was bad. I have a hard time going back to that spot, which I'm sure the other two ladies here are the exact same way. It's hard to even believe it was me. I just didn't want to be here anymore. So.
I was actually looking at some pictures of you from that time. I just remember meeting you. You had dark eyeglasses on all the time. And even when we were at the NIH event in 2017, you were so enthusiastic at the start of that crazy, exhausting experience. And then, like 3 o'clock, your energy level just started to fade. And I could see you pushing yourself to stay through,
Always.
And it's interesting because when I talked to several interns from that period, the feeling was, I'm so good right now, I don't want to go back. I just don't make me talk about that time. And I think that's the part that affects me the most when I hear teachers or administrators say these kids are milking this post-concussive syndrome, which now we call prolonged or persistent concussion symptoms. So often uneducated people judge, especially girls in these high school and college years, as, well, they're milking this. We know that they really could just push through. And it's, sort of the same, I think, against kids with learning disabilities. Well, only if you tried harder. And I don't know anyone with the prolonged concussion symptoms that wanted to stay in that space, go back to that space, or now even talk about it. Is there anything, Alicia, that you want to add about that dark time before we switch?
Yeah, I think, we kind of grew up in a generation where, I was playing sports my entire life. I started playing soccer when I was 4 years old. And it was kind of, the plan for me. It was set for me that I never was going to go to college for anything else. I was just going to go to college and play soccer, and I was going to get into a D1 school and a good scholarship. And that was my route there, right? So when I was a junior in high school and suffered these concussions and, basically was told, I'm lucky to be alive, by several doctors, that was kind of the click for me that it was an identity crisis. Having to live your entire life as an athlete and then kind of having it all stripped away from you so quickly, let alone, all of the physical pain that you were feeling, and kind of being told multiple times over and over and over again by so many doctors at that time, where concussions kind of weren't as researched as they are now. Basically, just go home, turn the lights out, take a couple days off, and then go back to school for a half day. That was kind of my plan for my entire junior year of high school. Spending that time in a dark room and just being very confused and genuinely looking in the mirror and having no idea who I was looking at. And having to hang up my cleats and look at college and look at my future in a different way than ever before was probably the most difficult part for me. Having the physical pain, I can handle a headache, I can handle the nausea, I can handle the dizziness. But the depression and the anxiety, and just the unrelenting, thoughts every single day running through your brain as far as, maybe this was how I was going to be for the rest of my life. Is this what it is for the rest of my life? And if it is, then I don't want to do this. And being 16, 17, like, that's a very pivotal point in your life of trying to figure out who you are. So having this brain injury on top of it really added an entire other entity of pain and agony. So it's again, like, going off of what Britt said, like, it is very difficult to talk about those times, because sometimes, I look at these pictures and these videos of me, and I see the pain in my eyes. I remember going to these events and talking about my story, and I was with Britt and we were in DC, and I remember turning to Katherine and I was like, I don't care where you put me, I just need a couch and I need to lay my head down for 20 minutes. And at this point it was only noon, so I think about those times and just the resilience that it took and the strength that it took to get through those days. I still don't think that we give ourselves enough credit for, but yeah, it was very, very painful. I still have a lot of trouble looking back at those times and remembering who I was, and who I am now. So I genuinely think about how painful it was. But yeah, I think I'm definitely grateful for finding people, because that's actually what brought me out of those holes. So
And I have to say, being a parent during those times, was parenting through Concussions 2008 through 2012, and the message really was, you know, if you shut yourself down completely, dark room, absolutely no exercise, you know, the fear of sudden impact, that, you know, if somebody, you know, you could be, you know, you fall and hit your head again. Yet that wasn't the science. It was basically doctors trying to give the best advice that they could at the moment, and a lot of it was just based from their experience as opposed to having the research out there. And I also think the language around, you're going to retire from sports, you will no longer be active, and I think now that there's much more understanding that you're going to have to modify your sports for a time period and then find other sports that fascinate you. So,
yeah,
Hannah, you have an incredibly supportive family. Do you want to talk about what you didn't get from the community? And I'm going to get a bulldog that's barking outside my.
Okay, wait. So what was the question again? Did you guys get that? Alicia, Brittni?
yeah, talking about how incredible your family is and how that helped you kind of get through those times.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So my dad, when I sustained my concussions in 2013 from soccer, so we're all soccer girls, if you can believe it or not. I was put in a dark room and I was stuck with, you know, these chronic migraines for years and years and years and years. And my dad, in his spare time, he would only research new doctors and new therapies, new support groups. And so he literally would, you know, spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day just to find any answers. And so it got to the point where he would fly me all around the country, from Montreal. Actually, that's not in the country, but I guess Canada too. So he would fly me to Canada, he'd fly me to Denver, he'd fly me like everywhere just to find an answer, because he could not, you know, tolerate seeing me in so much pain and so depressed and so down. Sorry, it's hard talking about these times. But yeah, so my dad found Katherine and they immediately became like best friends because Katherine's just incredible, right? And Katherine allowed my dad to connect with Pink immediately. And she allowed me and my mom to come out to the conference in Georgetown and then later the conference in Palo Alto. And it was just something so incredible for me to have that support from my dad and my mom and my siblings, that they were able to do anything to help me find this solution and this healing. But something that I remember is that when we went to the conference, I was really worried and I didn't know anyone, but I immediately was just welcomed with big hugs and a lot of excitement from Katherine and the girls, and I just immediately felt that love. And there's a study, actually, I think it's called the bunny or rabbit study, and it proves that if you give someone unconditional love, they're able to heal and have such a higher quality of health and I guess happiness. And so that's something that really, really helped me in my healing, was to feel that unconditional love. And I found it not only through my family, but also through Pink in that great time of need. So I'm so grateful.
And you've got me tearing up. And I remember this phone call from your dad, and he was just like, I love my daughter and I'll do anything for her. And he was the first of a series of dads I spoke to who really didn't have a lot of, I mean, you have a very strong community that you had come from in Salt Lake. But, and I think that's one of the reasons why your dad reached out. But there are so many dads that I've talked to whose whole lives were connected with their daughters through sports, and then lost that connection because their daughters were told no more sports. So fathers going into that role, and you just have such a wonderful family. I remember I was trying to go, really wanted to go to this sports conference in LA. I didn't have the money. Pink was already on a credit card, and your dad just said, there's a check in the mail for you, go. You know, and he did a lot. Your family has done a lot to allow me to go out and expand more. You also brought me Alicia Fong and cognitive effects, and Alicia and she's come to Rome. I think Alicia's on, Alina has spoken, and Dr. Fong has spoken almost at all of our events. So there's been such a great synergy between everybody here. And I do want to say that this is representational, these group and Pink Concussions at the time, of white families, families with insurance, intact families that had resources to take their kids. And it's only recently that I and Pink Concussions have looked and sought out families, women of color, families of different socioeconomic. So I do want to, like, it's this bad for girls that have families that have the resources. So I just want to acknowledge the families that don't have these resources. And we're trying to expand more to bring that. So back to our story. So Brittni, so what were the first waves of, going back up from that dark space where the light started coming in for you?
Well,
Or
Georgetown.
what? To now. I don't want to keep you in that space for too long.
No, it's okay. Georgetown was the first, but that was 2016. And then I'm going to say my last real step that I feel like out of the tunnel, as much as I'll probably ever get, was when I met my now husband in 2018. So it was, I guess, 2 years of that process of going from a complete dark hole, thinking I'd never get out, to then realizing that I can still have a life. And even in those 2 years, once I met everybody and I started finally seeing doctors that understood, and I started getting better and realized that getting better was going to be a full-time job, I put so much energy into protecting my energy that I still wasn't doing things. Like I wouldn't go out with friends because I had to conserve the energy I had, right? Like I had to make sure I was eating healthy and drinking all the water and doing the schoolwork that I could do, and cleaning or helping out around the house with my parents because I was still in my 20s and still living at home. I wanted to be able to do the things that I needed to do. And so then, after 3 o'clock, like I really conserved my energy. It was like that spoon theory to the max. And then when I met my husband, he really kind of started to pull me out of that shell. Like he understood and he didn't push, but he also nudged, and slowly I started going out more. Slowly I started going to restaurants. Slowly I stopped wearing my sunglasses everywhere we went. And I'm still not perfect, but I'm so much better than I was, just because I had somebody that believed that I could get better, that was going to help push me, but not push me over the edge, and then help catch me when I fell. Whereas my parents loved me, don't get me wrong, but they just didn't have that ability. They weren't able to, but Sal was, and he was my last pull out of that hole.
And what do you think the role of advocacy played? Because as much as you said you stayed in your house, you were on TV, you were in multiple articles, you were in a newspaper, you ran a golf tournament that I think literally almost killed you. You were really doing a ton of things besides staying around.
I was, and I don't mean that I sat around a lot, but I'm
going to just correct you on that, Miss Golf Tournament.
I didn't feel like I did as much as I could do. I still felt like I wasn't contributing in the amount that I should have been able to contribute, but advocacy was huge for me. It gave me a purpose. Soccer was my purpose for so long. And then when soccer went away, that was hard. And then 2 years later, I met you guys. And that gave me a new purpose. So yes, the articles, the conferences, the ESPN, it was all really cool, but that was like life-saving. It really was.
And I got to travel with you when you went up to ESP in Connecticut with your thing. And we can't go on. At some point, we have to meet Bubbles.
Oh, she's right here. She's in my lap.
Bubbles has traveled with us around the country to show us Bubbles.
You hear your name? They're talking about you.
I really truly believe that a dog, and there are some families that have called and said, we've been to 100 doctors, what do we do? And I'm like, have you bought a dog? I do believe in the healing quality of dog kisses.
Thank you.
They are the best. That is true. And snuggles.
Yes, true. So therapy dogs are big.
Yes, they're great.
Alicia, the same question for you, if I can remember what it was, which is coming back up, the role of advocacy. Where was that slope starting to go back up? And then the last question, I'll go back to Brittni. We'll start all over again and talk about where we are now. So what about the point where it's coming back up and you've had a rough time?
Yeah, so I definitely, when I got my feet wet a little bit in the advocacy world, I had the privilege of speaking at the United Nations. And that was in 2013, 2014. I think it was 2014 actually. So probably 2 years post concussion when I was kind of in the midst of this. And I remember standing, on the United Nations floor and just being surrounded by these big NFL guys and these big, all male. I was the only female, of course, and all male, Super Bowl, multi-Super Bowl winning champion rings, and these guys standing up here and saying, talking about how rough, their times were, but keeping it very close to the vest and not speaking the truth of the darkness that we kind of live every day. And then I stood up and laid it out raw and said, there's been nights where, I stare at my ceiling and I think about how much I don't want to do this anymore. There was nights where I remember, multiple ER trips where I physically couldn't open up my eyes, and my father carrying me into the car to take me to the ER. They had a 16-year-old, 17-year-old female standing up here and saying the truth about what's really going on in our brains. And I think that for me was a huge pivotal point in my recovery, because then I realized that this was actually an issue going on, around me and not just in my brain. So it kind of made me feel like a little bit less alone. And then that was kind of what opened me, when I had joined Pink and meeting all of these amazing women and being able to tell my story, really did, as much as they say it helped, the foundation, and it helped, all of these other people, it really helped me too. Because I had, hearing myself speak about what was going on and saying out loud the pain that I was feeling, did a lot for me as far as healing. But also, again, like Hannah was saying, my father and my mom, I think I made a list of like 30 doctors and surgeons and all of these different insane procedures, and how grateful I was, that my parents were able to do that for me. But the pivotal point was definitely when I joined the advocacy world, and being able to connect with people who are feeling exactly what I was feeling, kind of gave me that opportunity to be like, okay, Alicia, like, you're not alone, you can do this, because I knew that at that point I wasn't just doing it for myself. I was doing it for all of these women and for all of these people and all of these, student athletes who are just told to take this impact test a couple of times until you pass and then go back onto the field and keep going. I think for me, it was definitely an eye opener to, okay, you're not alone. And you're so much more capable than you think you are. So I think that out of all of that, the answer to your question is definitely joining advocacy and being able to be in the head of all of this research and sitting at these conferences and hearing all of this new information that's being put out was such a huge one up for me as far as learning about my recovery and where I was headed at that point.
I forgot that you were on the PASS tour with with me where we went to Chicago, and that was all before, that was 2015 when we were traveling with the medical director of the NCAA and Jerry Joya and people from the CDC. I forgot that whole year.
Yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah.
That was really pink. So that was awesome. And that for me was a very pivotal year to basically be on tour with concussion, national concussion figures. And also to see how we would have top people talking about this. We would have cheerleaders and giveaway bags and full breakfasts, and we might get 20 people in an auditorium. It just wasn't, the interest from the general public just wasn't there.
Yeah, it was definitely not there yet, especially, I remember in Chicago, we had, it was, they brought in like their entire, like, one of like the high school football associations, and all of these kids, and I'm looking at them and I'm telling them, like, listen, like, I'm not telling you to stop playing your sports. I'm not telling you to stop doing that. I'm just saying, educate yourself. Because if I had educated myself and if I had stopped playing when I needed to stop playing and take that break and get on the sidelines and give myself a few days, then I probably would not be in the position that I'm in right now. So I think for me, the advocacy was trying to make sure that people are not going to do the same mistakes that I did. And genuinely, it's kind of saving their lives, right? Because that was, for me, the biggest point was, I need to make sure that nobody else is going to go into the dark hole that I was in. And the only way to prevent that is to educate yourself and to educate you on the signs and the symptoms, what to look out for, especially as a parent with a kid on the sidelines. It was so important for me, and it was such a passion for me to make sure that my story got out to as many people as possible to save them from the pain and the agony that I had to go through, because I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And also part of the advocacy too was not to just focus on the physical symptoms, not to just talk about the headaches and the migraines and the neck pain and the dizziness and, not being able to walk through a grocery store. Like, yes, that was painful, but I think the depression, the attention, the ADD that came from it, and my memory loss, and a lot of the cognitive issues are so much more prevalent, to my story at least, and I think to a lot of people that don't realize that it is more than just a headache. It's more than just being nauseous. It's more than just, and that was so important for me to, and also difficult for me to come out and say, hey, listen, I was genuinely suicidal for a year and a half before I reached out to the right people and reached out to the right providers, to kind of look out for that, and I think it's so important to talk more than just the headaches. It's so much more than just a headache. So for me, that's what it was.
And it was also a time where mental health and athletes, that was not a topic of discussion.
It was, yeah.
Recently, right? So you were really the first out there kind of speaking at that at the national level. Same question for Hannah. What was the sort of point of coming back? And not only did you do advocacy for us, as you spent a year on a mission in the United States, but speaking another language. You want to share a little about that?
Yes, of course. So one thing that really, really helped me to find healing was to find a purpose outside of my doctors and healing process. And so first I started out with this idea of, let's get all of the amazing women on Pink and all the women around the world that are dealing with concussions involved in like a bracelet making company where they can somewhat give back and feel of a little purpose in their dark room. And that was an idea. It didn't really get pushed forward. But then my next idea was, let's start fundraising for Pink. Let's do these benefit concerts. Let's get the community together to really raise awareness and, trying to figure out more funds for Pink so that we can move this forward. And so I did that, and that was so fulfilling. And, it definitely pushed me because I wasn't healthy, or anywhere to be putting on these huge events, but I was super motivated, and it actually, we raised over $3,000 for Pink. So that was really exciting. And then my next step of finding purpose was I left on a 1.5-year mission. And my parents thought that I was crazy. They're like, what are you doing? You aren't healthy. Like, and I just felt deep down that I had made enough progress within the 3-4 years of dealing with my chronic pains, that I knew my body, I knew my triggers, I knew how to really protect my health in that type of environment. So I left to Miami, Florida. I learned Spanish. It's my favorite language. And I just spent all day, every day serving others, whether it was, in a community garden, or whether it was helping people move, or just teaching people about the scriptures, which I love. And so that's something that I did. And I started out with many, many, many migraines, and I actually became worse at the beginning because it was just a lot of stress in a new environment. But by the end of my mission, I was pain-free, and that's where I really found my healing. So I'm just so grateful for this experience. And I know that as you look outward and as you almost forget about yourself, but still remain conscious of your own health, you'll be able to find healing as well as you find your purpose and get involved in something bigger than yourself.
I loved following your newsletter and seeing pictures of your week and seeing the people that you interacted in. I mean, if you compare Salt Lake and Miami, and then you not only were in Miami, but they moved you around several times. So you were having new environments, you're speaking a new language, you're in a new, heat. It's a completely different environment than what you had grown up in. And it was just really inspiring for me to get a peek into your life in this way.
Thanks, Catherine. You're so supportive.
Well, no, it was really awesome. And it was 18 months. And how much of that, you didn't see your family within that time frame, right?
No, we just could FaceTime and do calls here and there.
So that was really, it was very inspiring for me. And I love the messages and just the people that you met, and the things that you did help move, provide them books, just, walking along and somebody would come up to you and you'd have this beautiful conversation. So it was very inspiring to me about, how the little things in life really are important. So I appreciate you allowing me to come along on that journey with you.
Thanks, Catherine.
So now sort of the final-ish question back to Brittni. So we just spent 18 months in COVID, and initially in our support groups, women in the support groups are like, yeah, people see what it's like to be stuck at home. Like the support groups were kind of like, yeah, we know how to do this. And Pink Concussions was already a virtual organization anyway, so we didn't have any, brick and mortar to pivot. We were already virtual. So, how has this last 18 months been for you? What did it set you back? Did it set you forward? What did you accomplish in the last 18 months that's meaningful to you? Brittni?
Well, I got married, so I feel like that's cheating, but that was right in the middle of it all. It was in September of last year. So we had kind of all of these plans set to go, and then COVID happened and everything blew up and everything had to be changed, but we still managed to pull off an absolute fairy tale of a wedding in September of 2020. So that was pretty cool. And our honeymoon was awesome. We got to go out to California and to Lake Tahoe, which was absolutely incredible. And I never wanted to come back. And so COVID actually kind of pushed me to start hiking a lot more, get outside and kind of, away from people. And so I've started a 52 hike challenge to go on 52 hikes this year, which I'm really enjoying, and is something that I never could have thought that I would have been able to do 5 years ago. So.
And I really enjoyed your fairy tale wedding because the photos were gorgeous, and I kind of needed that. I don't follow any reality TV shows or anything, and so I got to see this beautiful couple, adjust their wedding. Now there was also an educational degree you picked up in there.
Oh yeah, I got my master's too.
You got your master's, you just kind of slid over that one.
Well, it was right before the wedding that I finally got that. So we never got to have a graduation or anything, unfortunately, because it was right with COVID happening and nobody had really gotten to it just yet. But luckily it was an online program, so it didn't slow my degree down at all. So yes, I was able to get my master's in performance enhancement, injury prevention, and sports psychology. I'm a private soccer coach. I still love the game, and I get to work with about 40 kids, teaching them how to take care of themselves and not do to them what we did to us. So I take that pretty seriously.
And what do you want to do with that degree?
Well, I already am doing it. I work with all my kids, but I've used that to better what I was already doing. I've been working with a lot of my kids for 5 years now. It's actually one of the first ways I got back involved with the game after my concussions. But I was kind of just flailing around at that point, if I'm being honest. I didn't know nearly as much as I do now.
Well, if I remember correctly, it was a little bit of PTSD watching girls play and seeing concussions happening around you. I mean,
It was
really
very hard. My first year at a community college, I was an assistant coach, and we had 10 in 1 year, one season, actually 10, which that was hard for me because that just pointed out how prevalent they really are and how unrecognized they are. Because the only reason they were recognized is because I was right there. I was, 20 yards away and had 18 girls as my responsibility to keep them safe. And I wasn't diagnosing the concussions, but I would see the hit. They knew my story. We called them over. They would go see the athletic trainer, and there's another one diagnosed with a concussion. So that was frustrating for sure. And then yes, having to be back out there in those high intense games and watching the intensity rise and rise and the physicality get more and more and more, and the fear that one of my girls was about to be hurt was hard to get used to.
And now with a degree and this really great person in your support life, like what's next on your list?
Well, we want to start a family. You two are so funny. We would like to start a family. No rush. We're actually going to Hawaii in a couple of weeks with my parents. So not planning on trying to start until after that, but that's the next big step for us. So I'm excited to take the next plunge.
We're looking forward to that.
No doubt.
Alicia, what have you been working on during COVID, and how did sort of the shutdown help or hinder what you had going on at the time?
Yeah, so I decided to embark on a new journey. I want to be a nurse, and I finished my first degree, decided that it really wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And genuinely, my heart is with helping kids, helping younger people. So I got into nursing school. I am currently in an accelerated nursing program in Philly, which is kicking my butt, but that's okay. I'm on the right meds now, so we're good. And now I am currently nurse externing, which is basically like kind of like an internship at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And
Love them.
yeah, they're great. It's funny because I look around the hospital and there's tons of concussion info everywhere. I actually worked with Dr. Christina Master a couple weeks ago. I ran into her and I was working under her, which was pretty cool because it kind of came full circle for me because I've met her through Pink and worked with her with concussion stuff. So to be her extern that day was pretty cool. But yeah, so I have been doing that for a little bit. Besides that, I was a nursing assistant at a children's hospital, which actually specializes in brain injuries. So that was a huge, but like very, very, very traumatic brain injuries. So, we're having teenagers coming in after motor vehicle accidents, children without like half of a skull, like crazy, crazy brain injuries. So to be able to, be there for them in a different way than I'm used to, kind of on the medical standpoint of it was very real for me and also inspiring at the same time. it kind of gave me an opportunity to also be there for them in a different way, you know, to tell them that I know how you're feeling. And I think at the same time, it's like, you know, a lot of people say it's like, I understand, but I genuinely do understand. So that kind of inspired me a lot to, you know, be a better nurse, and you know, kind of showed me that path of where I wanted to go. So yeah, so I'm that's what I'm up to right now, which is very exciting because I am this time next year, hopefully, if I pass my NCLEX, I'll be working. But that's been my journey for a little bit. But going online was a huge, huge saver for me, honestly. Um, you know, as far as my like cognitive and physical symptoms, which are still prevalent every single day, um, it kind of gave me an opportunity to structure my schedule, rather than having my schedule structured for me. So having these classes online gave me an opportunity to listen to a lecture 3 times, you know, to actually, before I understood what they were saying. So going back into person is probably going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but I've already set up like some accommodations and stuff. So um, it's definitely given me an opportunity be to kind of like be my own advocate in that way. Because I see, you know, a lot of people are saying like, oh, I hate being at home, I hate being stuck at home, but I'm like, I've been stuck at home for the last 12 years. So like that, it's a norm for me. But yeah, it definitely, online learning was an adjustment, but not having that, you know, hour commute to go to class, was definitely to get that extra sleep. You know, I had an 8 a.m. class and I'm rolling out of bed at 7:50 was great. Um, for me, not only physically, but mentally at the same time. But yeah, so that's the update on my life. That's what I'm
You're
doing.
going to be an amazing nurse. You
Thank
really,
you.
really are. I'm
Thanks.
so excited. It's so fun to watch you, my little sisters. All right, Hannah, what have you been up to for the last 18 months, and where are you going next?
So right before COVID, I was actually working at Cognitive FX with Alina Fong, and I was loving everything that they were doing. I was interning for her. However, they had to, you know, make their team smaller during COVID, and so I decided to help her out with the Brain Injury Alliance of Utah instead. So, and I'm currently working for them today. And basically, what we do is we, you know, have a call system. People from all across the state of Utah, they call in, and then I'm a resource facilitator. So I help direct them to the best resources that would help them in that time of need. And so it's been super beneficial. I've had some of the greatest conversations with these amazing people, and I've made lifelong friendships. So it's been something really cool for me to do. As well, I'm studying to become a physical therapist, and I want to really specialize in the head, neck, jaw area. So that's my plan.
That's awesome. And I had the pleasure of speaking out at the Utah conference. I think that was 2019. And I got to spend some time at your house with your awesome dog and your family. And I think your parents literally drove me from the airport to the event and back around. And the people were great. I really, really loved being out in Utah. And love your dog. And so when you're thinking of going back to school?
So I actually have been in school this whole time. Ever since I got back from my mission in August 2019, I've been studying. I have 1 more year left of my bachelor's, and then I'll take a gap year and then go into physical therapy school.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really great.
Yeah.
I think everybody has gotten the idea now about how amazing you all are. And I wanted to see if anybody had any questions in the audience. And there's a lot of neat stuff going on in the chat. I can copy down the chat at the end. And so I'll give that to Alicia, Brittni, and Hannah to read all those comments. So if you want to put a comment in the chat for them, or if anybody wants to ask a question, we can go on chatting. But I just want to did anybody, Kellison, would you like to ask a question?
I don't know whether I'm like in the right group, because there's not been talk about, well, reference to helping them, but people who have suffered really traumatic brain injuries. My daughter suffered shearing. I mean, she had like a 1% chance to even live. And so at any rate, talk about going on to do other things, even though she is in the situation of being pretty much like a person who's had a stroke. She's paralyzed on one side, on her right side, and she speaks like somebody who's had a stroke, which makes it really hard to have long and interesting conversations with her because I have a hard time understanding her sometimes. At any rate, what are we now? It happened in 2010. And after she went through, she was a month in a coma, not induced. And then I don't know how many months, a number of months at Kessler Institute for Brain Injury. I think in New Jersey, Orange, wherever that is. At any rate, so that was 2010, and the prognosis at the time was all the reading and the everything that I did to find out about it is that there's a danger, great danger, that this person who has suffered this way is going to die early. And I feel that I'm seeing signs of degradation in her situation. And it just worries me. And, you know, I know worrying doesn't do any good, but I just thought maybe I could glean some help or some support. She, you know, she has done, I mean, she went on to write a book and get published, an autobiography, and she was an equestrian Olympian. And that's how she got her injury, not from soccer. At any rate, just more to talk about what, I don't know. I just don't know how to help her or how to feel, or whether my worry is unfounded or unnecessary, because it's not going to help. But
Preston, I really appreciate you joining us, and I'll have Kara share her for a little second. But I just want you to know that there's Marilyn Spivak has come on this show several times, and her daughter was in a severe car accident in I think 1978, and she comes on and talks a lot about the need for research to follow women over their lifespan, and as we go through hormonal changes, as we go through different stages, and the importance of looking at brain injury at the different levels that you start out, whether it be moderate, middle, or severe, and how those pathways across our life affect our cognitive ability, our ability to have children, our hormonal. So what you're talking, we are,
she went
as
on
an organization.
She also went on to have 3 babies.
Wow.
With a totally paralyzed right side.
That's amazing. Kara, did you
So-
want to speak?
I did. Thank you, Catherine. Hi, my name is Kara. I'm the advocacy director of Pink Concussions. And actually similar to your daughter, I was in a severe car accident when I was 23 years old, while I was going to law school in upstate New York. And I was in a trauma center there, and then I was transferred to Kessler, where I was in rehabilitation. And this is when it was, now it's in West Orange, it was in East Orange at the time. And I had a very, I would just say, a very like holistic injury, to the extent that I had multiple internal and orthopedic injuries, as well as a severe traumatic brain injury. and the outcome is unpredictable and unsure, and it's difficult, to navigate care. And I know that that's frightening, and that's definitely hard. And I'm glad to see that your daughter is making progress and is having a family and all of that. I'm pregnant myself right now, which I'm very excited about. And I guess I could say, with the support that I've had from Kessler and then at NYU in New York City, and then even today, I still see a neuropsychologist who I met or was first treated me at Kessler years ago. It's unpredictable and it's hard, but it sounds like your daughter is, making strides forward. And I would be happy to speak with you or her anytime. I can put my email is Cara, C-A-R-A, at pinkconcussions.org, but I can put that in the chat as well. If you'd like to connect, I would be happy to.
Yes, if you'd put that in the chat so I could write it down. But the problem now and why it's so crucial right now is that she is in major depression and even talking about suicide. So.
And that, I think that the role of mental health, the role of depression and anxiety, I know that in our support groups that the expression of self-harming and suicide is a piece of brain injury for many people. But I think it's very important to include professionals in that piece too. So Cara, that would be great if you could connect with Felsen. So thank you for sharing that with us, and we'll definitely connect with you. Is there anyone else that has a question for the guests today or wanted to comment? Yes, Elizabeth. And then
I just wanted to say thank you for having this. I do have a daughter who also, had a brain injury, and nobody would ever listen. And like all of these women said, everybody said, oh, it's not so bad. You'll get better. Don't worry about it. And the fact of the matter is, for many young women, it doesn't get better. And so if, just talking about it, having these stories out there, getting doctors to listen is just such a huge step. And I really want to thank you for having this today. And thank you for all telling your stories, because I know it's very difficult.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And this crew, I've dragged women all over the country and world, and we run these panels where we do kind of like what we did today. The one question that we usually do when we have a professional audience is, what did the medical community do to hinder your recovery or your journey, or what did the medical community do to help? And clinicians are always very interested. I mean, I think there's maybe a couple hours on brain injury in medical school. And if you didn't do a sports rotation, you're really left to your own devices and the conferences you come across. So I've always found the medical community willing to come forward, willing to listen to stories. And then I think once their eyes are opened, they really don't go back. It's just reaching as many as we can. Especially those that were trained at a time where maybe the most compassionate care and the mental health piece wasn't included. So ladies, do you want to comment before we go to Zena?
Yeah, definitely. I think that telling my story was a huge part of my recovery and healing for me. And I don't know if this can make you feel better, but what I've seen, at least at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, how much seriousness is taken with concussions. I wish it was as serious as it was when I was going through it. So the strides are being taken and the change is coming and definitely evolving. So I think for the next generation of athletes and people who do, suffer from concussions, they definitely have a much better chance at recovery than I think we ever did. So that makes me feel a little bit better. So I hope it makes you feel a little bit better too.
Brittni, Hannah, any comments before we go to Zena?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Zena, your question?
I think I just had more of a comment, and I just really appreciate you all sharing your stories and being willing to share. I think about the dark space and the emotional pieces, and I think I just see the interesting piece with, concussion and being your recovery process also being similar to people with severe injuries and the time that it takes, and helping to promote that understanding. And I really appreciate and feel like there does need to be that strong advocacy in terms of that mental health component and that dark place, so that individuals with brain injuries do have access to providers who understand the injuries and understand how the injury is impacting the presentation, and not thinking that it's other things. And it's been an interesting journey for me because I'm a school psychologist and a behavior analyst, and I did my behavior analyst training at a neurobehavioral institute for individuals with severe injuries. And then not quite 2 years ago, my son sustained a severe injury in a mountain biking accident. And so it's just been an interesting process going through that as a professional and a caregiver, but really, for me, beginning to understand that need for the mental health advocacy. And then also, I think just that willingness of people who are survivors to share about the dark spaces, because I think people hear the success stories and that's what's out there in the public, and everybody has made, the success stories are wonderful, but then being there for people and helping them understand. I appreciate you for kind of like, I don't want to say normalizing, but in a way normalizing the struggle, and then helping people be willing to express that so that they can find their path forward and their purpose. So thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Zena. Any comments? Good. Okay.
I can make a comment really fast. I just want to say thank you, Zena, because I feel like that's something that I need to be better at. I guess it's easier to just hide it, because now I'm healed. I sometimes deal with a little bit of headaches, but I've fully made a recovery. And sometimes it's just hard for me to go back to that space. But that's something that's made me who I am. So I need to be more vulnerable, especially with the people around me and even on social media. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Hannah, I appreciate that. And I think I just did not, because I know it's hard for me because I feel like a lot of our journey, and we're on an early part of it, some of it in that past, because I know when all of you talk about it's that balance of what to say and when. I think because I know for me, some of it is unspeakable. Like there are moments that you just don't want to share, but from some of that darkness, I think comes a lot of healing for people. So thank you. You're all amazing.
And I think also that sharing, these feelings and, especially on social media, as a licensed clinical social worker and being responsible for what 8,000 people are actually doing in these groups, there's definitely people that will post some, a suicidal ideation that, I'm going to take them offline, try to, and other, it's just like, I just don't want to be here today. I don't want to go forward. And I think there's a talk of self-harming and self not wanting to be here that is really important. And there's that range of where's safe to share that, and are the people in that space allowing that to safely occur. And it's definitely a balance to try to figure out those safe spaces. It's easier in person, but we have these large online, but it is definitely important. And there's a lot of very few safe spaces where you can express that darkness. So I appreciate, Alicia, Brittni, and Hannah coming on today and sharing it in a public platform. Kara, is your hand up because you have another question, or?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I never took it down.
No. So if there was a message that each one of you would want to give to somebody in that dark space right now, or a caregiver loving someone through that space, sort of as our final round, what would you want to share?
I would say it does get better. Like that was the biggest thing for me, is I really truly didn't think it was going to. I really didn't think it was going to. And it didn't happen all at once, but slowly little things got slowly better. And then all of a sudden I'm turned around looking back and I'm a different person. I didn't wake up one day and I became a new person, but from somebody who was in that space and not a medical professional who's never been in it, that's just like, oh, you'll be fine. Like, it does get better. It takes hard work and perseverance and patience and support, but it will get better. You just can't give up.
Stay hopeful.
Yeah.
Alicia, do you have any final comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, I think like, looking back into when I was in those dark places and thinking about what I needed to hear, or what I wish somebody would have said to me. I think about, I would definitely tell them that it's okay to feel what you're feeling. I know that a lot of people around you might not accept what you're feeling or might not understand what you're feeling, and that's okay too. But also knowing that you are so capable of surviving this, and that this is not this isn't all who you are. I think that was the hardest part for me, was trying to realize that I'm not alone and that it's okay that I'm feeling this way, but it's also necessary to ask for help. Because now there's so many resources available at your disposal 24 hours a day. Get the help when you need it. There are people that are willing to help you, and you're going to get through it, because there's no other way out but through it. So you have to do it. And it's going to be okay. That's the, going off what Britt said, it's going to be okay. So.
Thank you. And Hannah, any final thing you want to say?
I think for me, the hardest part was living in a normal world, but not feeling normal. And so I would look around me, and everyone at high school or in college, they all were, living this normal life in the normal world. But I would just say to that person, don't compare yourself to other people. That was something that was so hard for me. I would see all my friends playing soccer. I'd see all my friends, achieving all these great things, but just be patient with yourself, and with time, the body really does heal. Don't give up hope, and just love yourself. That's what I'd say.
Awesome. I really thank you all for spending this time and going back to some kind of dark spaces, but I'm so love you all, and just watching you guys go through. But I love you guys, and I hope that we can take what we've created together and help those that don't maybe have families or health insurance, or I think that's the next battle. Is we had a presentation on Tuesday that Black teen, from a study from 2016, that ER studied that Black teenagers were 4 times as likely as white teenagers to be in an ER because of an assault, as opposed to a sports injury. So I feel like there's so much amazing we've accomplished in this space, but I want to push into spaces where people don't have, and I've gotten to meet almost some family of all of yours, and you have amazing families, and you have intact resources. And for those families, those individuals who don't have families, who don't have the resources, who are dealing against systemic racism, that are kept away from, on top of everything else. So that's sort of the next goal. I'm so proud of all you guys. I love you guys, and you represent multiple other women that are interns every single year. We've actually had some boy interns too, so I'm really proud of you, and thank you for representing the 75 people that have served as interns, in the last 9 years. So thank you all. So a round of applause for our amazing peoples. And love you guys, and thank you everybody. We'll have 2 more casual conversations before the conference, and then we'll be taking the month of August off, and then we have starting a book in September. So you all keep showing up, we keep doing shows. So love you guys, thank you, stay safe, goodbye all.